today we're going to be taking kind of like a unique direction on the topic of creativity. I invited Paul Earle onto the show.
We're
Welcome,
happy to
Paul.
be here. Thanks for having
The high level is you work with brands on their creative. You're also an educator. You teach innovation, new ventures, and new brand creation at the Kellogg School of Management. So
me.
go
Thank you. Go.
Kellogg. We have that in
Yeah.
common. Yes. And I've had Jen Z. She's a co founder and CEO at Goodles, and she joined me for episode 95. So if you want to hear more about Goodles, want to hear more about the fantastic company they're building, the episode is called This is Huge: How to Take on Billion-Dollar Companies When You're Small. So I'm a really big fan of that one. And prior, Paul, you were co founder and executive director of the global creative agency. It's called
Mm,
Farmhouse, and it's Innovation and New Venture
yeah.
Center, which is a division
Yeah.
of Leo Burnett. So very cool to bring you on here, your creative mind. We'll talk about a lot of that in this episode. So just to give folks a little bit of background on Goodles before we kick it off with the questions. Goodles was founded in 2020, based out of Santa Cruz, California, has 42 people now. They had 24 people in the last episode. That was episode 95. So growing, which I'm really happy to see that. On the funding side, seed funded 10.2 million total. And Goodles is noodles gooder. Protein packed, veggie boosted mac and cheese.
Well, well,
Yummy. All right.
well put. Although I want to comment on the name, which is part of the creative magic. So,
Please
interestingly,
do.
you said Goodles. So we actually say Goodles just because we want to emphasize the good in the name. But my official answer to how do you pronounce it is this: whatever is good for you is good for us. Rare example of a brand name, and this is very intentional. This is by design, whose pronunciation is ambiguous. You don't see that a lot, and when in branding, especially from the creative side, usually there are very rigorous guidelines. You must do this, you must say that, you cannot say this. The Pantone must be this, and we have guidelines too. But we have very intentionally allowed for some play and fun and openness in how our brand is pronounced. And I actually think most people, and we'll get some data on this at some point, most people probably say Goodles, even though we say Goodles. Quick story about why that brand is magic. Well, the name itself. So when I
Yeah.
was about 8 years old, I was driving down the street with my grandfather. And my grandfather was an incredible person, engineer, designer, entrepreneur, philanthropist. He hybridized roses. He was an incredible photographer. He was a true Renaissance man in every way. And one of the interesting things about him is that he was a linguist as well. He was fascinated by the incongruities of the English language and loved wordplay and loved kind of examining interesting turns of phrase, etc. So we were driving down the street and passed a Greasy Spoon diner. I will never forget this. As you can tell, I haven't forgotten this. This was a long time ago. And in the window of this Greasy Spoon diner, there was a neon sign that said "Good Food," and it was flashing. And my grandfather said, "Paul, shouldn't that be good food, or is it good food? Which one is it?" And I laughed and laughed and laughed and laughed and laughed, and we went back and forth for actually a long time in the car debating, is it good food or good food? And of course, the what's interesting is those two words look like they rhyme and should rhyme, but they don't. And so when we were developing names for this new mac and cheese idea and landed on Goodles, I thought, oh my goodness. Or oh my goodness, I guess. Oh my goodness. This is what happened with my grandfather 30 years ago, and it's good food. How do you pronounce it? So that engagement and the fun of it and the discovery of it is a big part of the magic of our trademark. And that's where actually Goodles started with the brand, that the brand and the design world and the name and the nomenclature and the wordplay and all of that existed and was very well developed out way before a single noodle was ever produced. So actually, we led with the brand, and I'm involved as a co-founder in other ventures too, and they all start with the brand, which is kind of bass backwards. The traditional school of thought is, well, you have the insight, and then you develop a prototype, and then you develop the product, and then you do market research, and way later in the process, you get to the work of developing names and designs. Well, we actually flip that, and we start there. And I think it's a better way to do it.
You think it's a better way to do it?
Well, because ultimately, brands that succeed do so in part because of an intense emotional connection created with people. And oftentimes a brand world, the intangible assets, can lead that process, and trademarked it, Noodles Gooder, before the R&D process began. And so Noodles Gooder was the brief for our incredible R&D leader. That's what she was aspiring to. She really thought through, well, what does Noodles Gooder mean? And so actually the line came first, and it was very inspiring. It was a kind of a North Star, a high bar to achieve from a product development standpoint. And, our head of R&D, Molly Mache, who's incredible. Everybody on the team is incredible, by the way. Molly's amazing. Molly said Noodles Gooder to her meant a product that tasted incredible and was jam-packed with lots of good stuff. And that's what Noodles Gooder meant to her, and now it's what it means to us. And Gooder stands for lots of other things too, not just the nutritional profile. So it's a broad term.
Yeah, like doing good, because that's part of your
doing good, but
culture.
Actually, to us, Gooder is about more than just doing good. Better. We want to do everything better. We want to do packaging better. We want to do social mission better. We want to do food better. We want to do retail better. We want to do our consumer hotline better. If you call our main number, the phone tree itself is a creative expression and lots of rabbit holes. So Gooder means lots of things. In my mind, it means improvement. It's an aspirational dream to make things better or gooder. And we know gooder is not a word in the English language, and that's again part of the fun. It's actually grammatically incorrect, but gooder is really what we're all about. And yes, social mission is part of that. We want to be a good neighbor to our community in Santa Cruz and everywhere. Our virtual community of fans all across the country. We want to be a good neighbor. We want to keep them well fed. We also want to make them smile and think. And that's a big part of our remit, big part of my remit. My unofficial title at Goodles is Chief Oh No You Didn't Officer. My job, amongst other things, is to make sure that the creative work we do and all the work we do surprises and delights at every possible opportunity. We love the idea of being weird. Weird is an interesting concept. If you look at the state of education these days, perhaps for a long time, start off a little weird, and it's celebrated and embraced. And then sometime around second or third grade, weird flips and becomes a pejorative. And there are both visible and very odious, awful, evil, less visible methods to try to correct weird or excise it even. You're a weirdo. That's not a compliment. But weird is magic. Weird is where the wonder resides. Every single one of without exception, every successful new venture in the consumer space, and perhaps all spaces, but I know the consumer space best, they're all a little weird. Every one. And by that I mean 100. They're all strange in some way. Like, Schmidt's Naturals, one of my favorite brands, and Jamie Schmidt is one of my favorite people. The first product expression was deodorant in like a mason jar. You had to scoop it out with your fingers and apply it manually. That's super weird. And I think Jamie was wearing a bonnet on the first package label. Super strange. That was part of the initial appeal and engagement, and they evolved over time, but it started off like really weird. And so at Goodles, we love weird. We look for ways to be unusual and do things that are unexpected and provocative and wonderful and weird. So weird is a big part of what we're doing. And I'm on a mission to help kind of reframe what weird is. Brands are people. People are brands. They're the same. And there's nothing worse than a wonderful, quirky, creative kid who becomes outcast because he's a weirdo. By the way, that's the guy who's going to change the world when he's an adult or she's an adult. And so, brands are the same way. Weird is not a pejorative. It's a superpower. And final comment on weird, such a hard time being creative and launching awesome new products is because they deploy very sophisticated testing methods developed by math PhDs and advanced algorithms whose entire purpose is to identify anomaly and remove it. That is what they do. Kind of like sharks swim, eat, and make baby sharks. That's what they do. These testing methods at the big multinationals are designed to remove anything unusual, like a bleach wipe. But that's the good stuff. So why are you doing this? So anyway, I could go on and on about weird.
Yeah, we completely went off script, by the way. This was not at all. The listeners are like, wow, this is cool. This is really interesting. This is completely off script. I really find it fascinating what you mentioned about, it was really important for you to mention that brands that succeed do so in part because of intense emotional connection created with people. And so you started that process even before you developed the product. And that's kind of I hear it sometimes. Like I hear about on the B2B side way less. I hear about, we didn't even have a product, but we started to post content, like start to create this brand. What are we going to talk about? What's our point of view? It happens a lot less. It does happen. And then you already have all these people that are like, give me the thing. I know about you now. I'm waiting for you to develop this thing so I can, eat it, use it, whatever it is, right? And I think there's some goodness in that. The other thing that goodness, I can't believe I used that word. Goodness. The other thing I've heard on the B2B side, because I invite both onto this podcast, is they have the product, they have buyers, and they started a podcast, for example, and they're finding that they love the podcast because they're able to get their ideas out, creative ideas, and get inspired, right? And it's helping to propel the product in like the product roadmap comes from what they talk about on that podcast. So it's very interrelated.
Yeah. By the way, sorry we're off script, although I will say it's apt because Goodles is off script. It's
kind of perfect.
Of sorts. And perhaps I'm off script myself. That's a good name for something, off script. Maybe that's your next podcast or we'll do it together.
Maybe.
But again, it starts, I believe that great creative is the ultimate product development brief. The ultimate. And again, I do believe that, again, this is just my opinion. Most people would not agree with what I'm about to say, and that's fine. That's why this is interesting. I believe you got to start with the creative. I think creative is the ultimate source of inspiration, the ultimate magnetic force to pull product development forward, etc. So that's just a personal belief, and it's. So far it's working. I mean, that's how we did it on Goodles and in other ventures I'm part of. Just a quick example, this is primarily about Goodles, but I'm also a co-founder of a whiskey brand called Big Nose Kate, named after a famous Old West outlaw. Kate was a real person, Doc Holliday's crime partner, all that stuff. So Kate herself was an immigrant, an entrepreneur. She did a million things, both illegal and legal, ethical and not ethical, fascinating person. But she was a blend. She was a blend of her Hungarian roots, the influences of the Old West, crime, gambling. So Kate herself was a blend. And that story of Kate is why our product developer, Melissa Heim, who's also absolutely freaking incredible, developed the liquid to be a Western blend because Kate was a blend. So it's not like, so we had, hey, we've got all this brown juice in the bottle. What do we call it? Let's call it Big Nose Kate. It started with Big Nose Kate. And her profile is why the liquid is what it is. And I think that's another good example of how creative can actually lead the R&D process.
Yeah, I love that. So I wanted to ask you because I love Goodles.
You can say Goodles, it's okay.
So I actually have the sticker because I've bought Goodles before, but then I also got sent the product, and then I got a bunch of stickers and all that stuff, and my kids stole some, but I have it on my laptop. It's the only sticker because it's so fun, it's colorful, it's big. I just love it. There's so much creative that I love on the website and the packaging. When I go to Whole Foods and I see the boxes, how did you started the creative process for Goodles? You started before the product is developed. How did you make it so good? Like,
Well,
what's your process? What were you thinking
about? I think
about?
what you're doing, if I hear you correctly, is you're asking about the spark for the design world, which is very distinctive and unique. And so I'll tell you the story because I was there and helped lead that process. So if you look at our logo and color scheme and other visual elements, most people kind of default assume that, oh, it's 70s and 80s nostalgia. It's a, three-dimensional bubble type logo, and it comes out of the world of shag carpets and all of that stuff. And that's not really so. Actually, the jumping off point, the spark for the Goodles visual world was a painted wall in a skate park. So again, nothing is accidental with Goodles. This is all all very intentional. When we set out to create the visual world, we wanted to avoid all of the completely hackneyed, cliched kiddie tropes. As my partner Jen says, don't give us any anthropomorphic veggies doing push-ups. None of that stuff. No elephants or bunnies or little stuffed animals. And similarly, we wanted to avoid any of the cliche pandering to moms, like, hey, it's a back to school special. We wanted to avoid all of that. Actually, the list of things not to do visually was longer than what we wanted to do. So we set out to create some real tension, and we designed with a contemporary 27-year-old trend forward cool person, like the cooler version, of the younger, cooler version of ourselves. Basically, I'm a little old. I'm not that old, but I'm older than 27. So we set out with a contemporary trend forward with a 27-year-old in mind, and wanted to put real tension and edge and bite into it. And so we started with a graffiti in a skate park, and that's also where the color world comes from. It's something that you might see spray painted on a wall. So and again, it's very, very different for the category, which is kiddie stuff all over the place. And the irony is, and this is kind of working out the way we planned it, actually. Sometimes a plan comes together and works. The irony is creating something for a 27-year-old actually is a way better way to appeal to a 38-year-old mom than pandering directly to that 38-year-old mom with all the boring stuff she's bombarded with every day anyway. So it's win-win. We're able to appeal to to contemporary younger folks as well as everyone else because kids love it too. They're tired. If you're 12, you don't want bunnies and elephants and illustrated veggies doing push-ups either. Nobody really wants that. By the way, one other note on audience. We are very disciplined and really internalize it and believe it. We don't have consumers. We certainly don't target anybody. Like, raise your hand if you want to be someone's target. We don't talk about users. Like, these are terrible terms that the marketing world has somehow accepted as normal. We don't target people. Our game, name of the game for us, is to build fans and try to build a fan base and a relationship with our fans just the way Taylor Swift would, or a band would, or musicians would, or artists would. You don't hear Taylor Swift talking about her her latest album. That's ridiculous. So why do brands do it? It's awful. So we are all about fans. We have fans, and we love them. We're building relationships with our fans, and we want our fan base to swell and grow, and that's what we're trying to do. And it rethinking our own internal language that way actually does show up in the work. I think it has a way of seeping in.
Well, I'm a fan, and I think folks need to absolutely check out Goodles. If you just try it once, just like take a look at it. If you're in marketing, you're absolutely going to want to take a look at the website, take a look at the packaging, check it all out because the creative is just so good. I even put a sticker on my laptop.
I love that.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Paul. I had so much more I wanted to cover. I will bring you back on another time and we will cover more. You're so creative. You're so just like down to earth and fun to talk to. And if anybody wants to find Paul, you can do so on LinkedIn, Paul Earle. I'll include a link in the show notes. And to check out Goodles, go to Goodles.com.
Goodles.com. And
that's right. Thank you so much.
At all Goodles on Instagram too.
Love it. Thank you so much,
thank
Paul.
you.